in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to you. Please go ahead and click that like button as you come in. Click the share and subscribe. How's it going, Kaizo? Can we go ahead and hear your microphone? How's the audio going? How's
Yeah,
everything?
it's doing good. What about you?
Not too bad, not too bad at all. Not too bad. Just out here trying a couple of things. Let me see. I think I used to like that lo-fi. Yeah, lo-fi. Yeah, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ike Ogyamian channel. And we discuss all kinds of things. And today we're going to be talking about something which is rather central geopolitically. The ancient Eurasian civilization, Russia. And the things surrounding Russia these days in the news. We know about the Ukraine. We know that President Donald Trump has been re-elected. And there's much to discuss in this view. And the title of the stream today is called When Your Ambition Exceeds Your Power, Ambition Exceeds Your Capabilities, Ambition Exceeds Your Capacities. And it's typically a tragic story. On the one hand, if you have too much ambition and you don't have the capacity, you have these wax-like wings and you try to fly to the sun like Icarus, you get burned down. A tragic story indeed, which we all know. And then, there are other forms of tragedy as well. If you have a lot of capability but not enough ambition, and that's also can be tragic, right? And I'm saying that there's something regarding the Russia's position in the world, which is more of the former. They have grand ambitions, some of which are justified. They haven't been able to pull it off. I think that's an empirical fact, right? They have not been able to pull it off. And when we discuss Vladimir Putin, I would like to discuss him within the context of the Russian regime, because in this case, very much so, the context does make the man, the context does make the leader, the position, his role, right? It's very much defined by the context that he finds himself in and the things that he's somewhat forced to do and all that, right? But Kaizo, if we just lay down some, and we'll get into this, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get into this as you guys come in. Please go ahead and click that like button, click that share button, and subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, okay? Now, some points to put on the table, Kaizo, just like a scattershot of things that come to mind when I mention Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Ukraine, Zelensky, right? The East, the West, NATO. What are some things that come to mind? Let's throw it on the table. And then I want to try to develop this hypothesis regarding the context making the man, and that the context really is one of a tragic story of power not matching ambition. But what comes to mind, Kaizo?
Yeah, so when you mention, let's start off with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is definitely the longest serving Soviet leader since Stalin. And there's something to be said about that. The guy was a president from the 2000 until 2008. Then, of course, he served as um, as a prime minister, then came back into office 2012, and he's been there since. And he's gonna obviously re-elect himself this time. This time he's not gonna play the game because Russia is now in a sort of military leadership, right? There's something to be said about the fact that they are in a current war with NATO, so he's not gonna leave power anytime soon. So of course we also have on the other axis, when it comes to NATO's power, we have Donald Trump, right? He came into presidency after the Great Black Hope. Shout out to Harvard education, right? And then now he failed the second time, right, against Bernie Sanders, and it came back again, right? So we have two American leaders, sorry, two world leaders, right? One of them is American. He's already defied so many odds. The fact that he came re-elected after losing, um, without having the popular vote the first time around, is actually unprecedented by itself. And of course, you have Putin, who's just been there in power for the longest, Soviet power. Then you have, of course, the Ukraine situation that started in 2014. That's when the tensions began rising, when Ukraine started declaring that they want to join NATO, for example. They
Mhm.
started saying crazy stuff like that, and of course, um, Russia wasn't having it. Why is it important? Is we had the Cold War, right, and this war between America and the specifically Russia, right, the Soviet power at that time. And the Cold War, a lot of it was due to some kind of missile crisis, right? Russia's becoming powerful. It was having an opposite economic policy, which was more of socialism, and of course America had capitalism. So there was issues there regarding the spirit, as well as now military, as well as peace in Cuba, right? Russia was declaring itself an ally to Cuba. They were trying to put, military weapons in Cuba, and of course, America was scared for its own existence. So, if you compare the Cuban missile crisis to what's happening right now in Ukraine, where a country like Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and NATO was slowly encroaching, on the surrounding countries around Russia. Russia decided in 2022, February 24th, just to go and have a military exercise, right? That's what they called it, into Ukraine. And that's how the Russo-Ukraine war started, at least in terms of physicality.
Special military
The exercise, yeah,
exercise. Yeah.
right.
So I like some of the things that you mentioned. I'm going to touch on some of them as we kind of go around here. The idea of Trump, okay, and how does it intersect with Putin? Besides the idea of election interference, right, which you've heard about, basically the Russian regime, if you will, trying to interfere with American elections in favor of Donald Trump, right? That is one aspect. But really, if you look at the political platform that brought Donald Trump into power, one of it had to do with a rethinking of American adventurism, right? Right? The idea that America, whether on the liberal end of things, doing nation saving, right, humanitarian uh, intrusions into other countries, or on the right, doing nation building, right, being all over the Middle East, for example, and being all over the world, and this NATO encroachment that you mentioned, this is at least rhetorically, at least on paper, these are some of the things that the Donald Trump's base, and I'm sure you would agree with me, is disagreeing with. They're challenging this idea of us being in endless wars, right? And spending all this blood and treasure trying to be the world's policeman and having all these alliances and all these other kinds of things. Now, whether it is completely foolish to do that or not, point is, Trump has articulated this particular uh, grievance that the American people have regarding American adventurism. And this works in Vladimir Putin's favor, in Russia's favor, because it's saying, hey, yeah, sure, America, you guys are out there doing all these kinds of things outside of your natural sphere of influence. Natural sphere of influence would be, hey, you're a big power. So, yeah, sure, Cuba, you want to protect Cuba and you need to run things around Mexico, South America, and whatnot. But you guys do that there, and you're even extending further into the Middle East and all these places. And then you want to come to my backyard, which should be my natural sphere of influence as well, right? So these kinds of things make it such that from Putin's point of view, I'm sure he would see Donald Trump as someone who would be less interventionist, more America first, and less into these kinds of adventurism and whatnot. His first term, right, as president, Donald Trump, that is, saw no new wars, right? So he did walk the talk in that regard, right? So, and it could be argued that there are many people within the establishment, the arguments for the establishment and the adventurism has not been made yet, whether on the left, being nation saving, or on the right, nation building. Point being, regardless of wherever you go in the American establishment, it tends to be that kind of adventurism, going out there into the world to make things happen in other nations, and Trump is pushing back against that, right? And also, there's this point. I'm just repeating the point of the natural sphere of influence. Should a country such as Russia, a natural providential power, sees itself as a natural providential power, the Eurasian Empire, if you will, the same way that China saw itself as the Middle Kingdom, Russia sees itself that way, as a civilization unto itself. They've been running things over there. They feel like they have the right to run things, that they have providence, if you will, to run things. And do they have the right to go out there and have their own sphere of influence? The West would say, hey, well, sure, you could do that, but how about freedom of joining, right? The West will say, hey, Ukraine should be free to join any particular alliance. And there is a treaty that's actually signed by the Russians that states as much, right? Hey, nations are free to join whatever alliance. If Ukraine wants to join NATO, let it join. If Ukraine wants to join you, then it should be free to join you. Yeah, if your sphere of influence, if your game is not strong enough to bring the people in, then that's your problem, right? But we know that's kind of a little frivolous, because we go out there and force our nation building and nation saving on the world without them necessarily wanting it either, right? Spreading democracy one bomb at a time. But these points that I just made regarding the natural alliance between the less American adventurism, less nation building, less nation saving, more America first focus, and let's not go out there and try to quibble with other people's desire and perhaps right to have their own sphere of influence, that this is a nexus that where Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump can meet, right? I don't know if you have any comments regarding all the things I've just laid down.
Yeah, so I want to take it back, and I'll try to tackle some of the points that you've made in a more sort of precise way. So if you look at Europe, the only powers that still have considerable military strength are France, United Kingdom, and of course Russia. Most of the other countries don't actually have considerable military strength. If you look at Germany, Germany is an economic powerhouse, but that was only because America allowed them, after America kind of tried to cripple the economy, similar to what happened with Treaty of Versailles after the First World War, whereby Britain and France tried to cripple Germany. But they realized actually America needs a sphere of influence in Europe. So Germany was propped up to be the economic powerhouse. However, because of the fear of how ingenious German people are, they weren't really allowed to build their military, right? So that's why if you look at Europe, Germany is economically powerful, but they're very reliant on America. And this includes countries similar to like Netherlands, etc., right? The Dutch, and such. Now, the UK, United Kingdom, they also do have supposed military strength in the name of the Trident, which is what they call their nuclear weapon program. France obviously also has it. So you have the French, the British, and of course the Russians, who are still somewhat sovereign. Every other country is actually aligned heavily to NATO and with America at its helm. So realistically speaking, when you're looking at the sphere of influence, Russia is a country that if America did not try to force its neck down the Eastern and Soviet region, Russia would have taken over Europe a long time ago. There was this necessary allegiance with Russia during the Second World War against a greater threat, which was Germany. But after that, America was, slowly they realized these people ain't nothing to mess with, right? Within a few years, they were able to copy, through, whether it's espionage or, other means, they were able to get nuclear power just like America in a very short amount of time. So these people definitely have that self-belief They do believe in that suffering while also achieving something at the same time. So there's a spiritual element to the Russian people. I mean, they've gone through so much, but it seems to make them stronger and unified. They still have Christianity at its helm. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if Russia is not if Russia is allowed to run unencumbered, not only will they have a huge sphere of influence in Europe, which has already been made weak by America, it will also have a sphere of influence within the global South, and namely because Russia didn't have any historic grievances with the global South countries, right? Apart from its neighboring countries of the Soviet, and again, that's very much like family squabbles, right? They never
Mhm.
went to Africa for whatever reason, right? Whether it's because they couldn't, or it wasn't economically viable, or they just didn't want to
Mhm.
take over countries with racially different, dissimilar people. They never did that. So right now, Russia is supporting all these countries in the global South. They're supporting North Korea, which is another thing to add in here, right? Recently, what's happened is the leader of North Korea has stated that they're going to be putting boots on the ground in Russia to help support the war effort. Meanwhile, Putin has also stated if NATO, any member of NATO, puts grounds in support of Ukraine, that they will turn this war, which right now is through conventional means, as far as anybody knows, into a nuclear situation. And that's not going to be good for NATO at all. And in fact, that's what's going to cause America's sphere of influence to die out, right? So many things have happened in the last couple of years. The Nord Stream, was bombed by someone. People think it's America, and that already kind of crippled Germany in so many ways because we're getting very affordable oil and gas through there. Meanwhile, now they have to buy it through some various means, through India, through America, which is more expensive, and
You know
it's
what?
causing issues for them.
I have to pause you there because you're laying a lot of things, a lot of good stuff on the table. Um, pretty good indeed. Let me see. Is that the right one? Yeah. Uh, round of applause to you there. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to D2, Chaos Rain, Raphael Williams, and Sudata Ray in the building. Okay, so what you mentioned, right? I just want to put some more because let me take a step back regarding what I said we were going to be talking about here. Okay, we are putting into context the man Putin, right? And we're saying that the context is important. The context of the Eurasian Empire, Russia, and its place, its natural sphere of influence. Can it have a natural sphere of influence? The West says no, and they say yes. That is the international relationships between Russia and the United States 101. That's basically it, right? Now, you talk about the natural way in which Russia, the Eurasian Empire, would have exerted its influence and dominance within that space without the West, and that's a key point there. Without the West. Now, I talked about the fact that um, so there are going to be two basic blocks that we're introducing now. You brought in the West, right? Eurasian Empire. We've been kind of talking about its natural sense of providential power, it seeing itself as the Middle Kingdom. There are three basic kind of important empires in that Eurasian sphere. You have the Persian Empire with Iran, right? We have problems with Iran, the United States, that is. You have the Chinese, we kind of have problems with them too. And then you have Russia, we also kind of have problems with them too. So there's something about that civilization, those group of civilizations that see themselves as, rightly so, as providential powers. And then here comes this upstart, America, only 200 years. China's been there for thousands of years, all those kinds of things. Okay, but basically, we have something whereby Alexander, right, the Tsar, defeated, what's his name, Napoleon, right? And that was how the English were able to defeat Napoleon, was with Russian help. Same thing happened again, as you mentioned, World War II, Stalin, right? Defeated the Germans and the Japanese, took the brunt of the blood, right?
They
Uh,
lost a lot of the men.
yeah,
Most deaths in Europe was actually on the Russian side.
100%, right? It is 100% correct for the Russians to say, no, we won the Second World War. If America has any right to say that at all, Russia 100% has a right to say that they won it, right? So you have this thing where, hey, Alexander defeating Napoleon. Alexander is out there in in Versailles, writing, the treaties that, that runs the world, if you will. So prior to, like, 18th century, that kind of stuff, and prior, you have England and Russia dominating, right, in a certain sense. Stalin repeated the thing again and again. There's that sense of providential power whereby the czars have been running that whole area. Okay, so this is the point where there is an ambition there, and that I'm saying that the capabilities do not match this ambition. Hence the title of the stream, and this is the context that it's going to then mold someone like a Vladimir Putin. So there is that ambition there, natural providential power, all that kind of stuff. But then there's the West, right? So the West is quite powerful. Okay, now even if we wanted to drag it out of this more abstract plane, which I'm in right now, and come to some facts regarding Western institutions, right? And the West is a set of institutions. It's not necessarily a sphere of influence and set of institutions. It's not necessarily a geographical or cultural thing. Japanese is not European, but it's Western institutionally, right? And Russia is European. It's in Europe, but it's not Western, right? It has its own history of how it came to. It didn't go follow, the English common law type of stuff to the what we now typically call the liberal democracies and whatnot. Okay, so the IMF, the EU, NATO, the Fed, okay, the dollar, the English language, okay, all these things dominate the world. And Russia has a choice. Am I going to play second fiddle, or do I need to force myself to be head and shoulders above, stand in the first ranks? I would say that the tragedy of Russia in the past 50 years or more has been them saying, no, we want to be number one. We are going to be on top, right? Which, as you said, naturally they might be, but then there's the West, and the West has a say, right? And the West has decided that even up to a point, in ways in which mistakes have been made, so many mistakes that it will lead somebody like a Donald Trump to be elected by pushing back on the less American foreign interference, less adventurism, less nation building and nation saving and all that kind of stuff. Let's pull it back. Why can't, as Donald Trump said, yeah, but we kill. They say, hey, Putin kills a lot of people. Donald Trump said, hey, we kill a lot of people too, right? That kind of a thing. So the only point I've really made here is I've added the West having a say to this natural thing that you pointed out, the natural providential power of the Eurasian empire being Russia, right? And they have a lot of ambition, but their capabilities cannot match the rival, right? So they have a choice. Either I'm going to step down, right, and still be a great civilization, but not try to play in the biggest leagues, right? Or I'm going to try to assert myself full force there. And I'll continue this building to the point where we get to someone like Vladimir Putin coming into this power within this context, coming in to run something like Russia with this looming in the background, right? It's not like it's just, oh, Putin. No, it's this idea of a providential power with great ambitions. And then there's the West. This is going to fashion the way that Putin operates and whatnot. But you may go ahead, conclude and or add.
Yeah, and by adding up, obviously, Putin is one of these. People could say that Putin is a deep state plant within the Russian hegemony, right? He worked as a KGB agent for over 16 years, rose all the way up to lieutenant colonel, and then he so-called quit his career to join as a politician, right? And when you're working as a deep state spy, more or less, right? It's very difficult to so-called quit. You're always somewhat a sleeper cell agent. So the guy was obviously helped by state because they believe that he is definitely a nationalist. And then there's also that Stalin effect. One thing that we haven't mentioned already is that both Putin and Trump are both people that have similar effect as Obama. They're both extremely what's that term? Charismatic individuals, right? Both of them have high levels of charisma. Okay, so
go ahead.
Yeah. Right. So if you add up all those facts there, right, you can kind of see that there's a natural progression of how Putin sort of gained power. Now, you mentioned something about the West and Western influence, as well as the Eurasian influence. Now, what's interesting thing here is obviously countries like Japan, South Korea, Singapore. These countries are Western propped countries, right? Japan, after the Second World War, when Hiroshima and Nagasaki were hit with a H bomb, Japan yielded, right? They yielded, and they basically become an American, and they basically become a state that was ruled by America. They shut down their military army. They shut down their navy. I think that right now is when Japan is slowly rebuilding its navy, and this is only because of threat from China and North Korea around the Pacific Ocean, right? So they are only doing it because basically, actually, it's within America's best efforts to actually have them have the navy. South Korea, same situation. They're propped up by America, right? These are all Western countries. They formulate this Western ideology. They're extremely ranked within the monetary systems, IMF, when it comes to moving. Yen is actually one of the world reserve currencies right now, 5% of the market, etc. Right? All these countries are propped up by America as strategic allies in order to fight against Eurasian influence. So you do this right now, then Russia, right, and its so-called friends like China, they decided, hey, why don't we create our own sphere of influence? Instead of just focusing on geographic countries that are close to us, we can actually extend our soft power and then create the BRICS nations. And this is, of course, their attempt to fight against Western hegemony, which is heavily controlled through things like super chats, right? If you're getting super chats, you're part of the SWIFT system, right? You're able to.
You're insane. But I get your point. I want to make a quick point here regarding. So we talk about a multipolar world, and we talk about this particular attempt, let's say, with the BRICS. The thing is, if you have to look at the major, I call these institutions that I just mentioned, the EU, NATO, IMF, the Fed, the dollar, even the English language, which is a cultural layer, whereby, even if you are China and you go to some kind of Asian regional conference of other Asian countries like Vietnam, whatever, what language are they speaking? They're speaking English. Okay. So that is just a sense of the heaviness of this particular oppressive weight of the Western power on you. And you can't name me one of these institutions, right? Such institutions headed by somebody from South Africa or Brazil or Saudi Arabia or whatever, right? The IMF, the EU, NATO, such and such. Now, this is not about whether it's right or wrong or anything. I'm just saying that the power of this Western voluntary sphere of influence, and it's seemingly voluntary. That's the well, let me not get into the politics of pressure and power, right? But it can be sold as voluntary, right? The West can say, hey, people join, right? People join us, after we drop 2 nukes on them and all that kind of stuff. And tell them to, but it can be said that, like, hey, the people are joining, hey, but it left to, hey, Ukraine doesn't want to join you. All those trash canistans over there in your neighborhood don't want to join you. But hey, they come to us. They come running to us, right? That kind of a thing can be said about the West. So the thing is, and I'm going to divert here, if I may, into this idea. One of the things that Putin fell for. Putin got away with murder, literally and figuratively, and also maybe started believing, because the West left it alone for a while, and it's still kind of leaving it alone. But I think that it did not even expect the kind of reaction it got from Ukraine or for the Ukrainian incursion. Started to maybe believe in this kind of multipolar world, and the West is kind of feckless and not as strong, and all these other kinds of things. And look, I've been killing people left and right for all these years, and all these kinds of things. Maybe I'll make this other move, right? But you brought up many great points that I want to add. I want to start honing in on the man, right? Vladimir Putin. We're given the context. We talk about the Eurasian Empire. We talk about these ambitions that perhaps the capabilities cannot match these ambitions, right? The ambition of being a providential power, having a great sphere of influence, playing at the A leagues alongside the West. Oh crap, here's the West. Oh my God. Went back in the days of Alexander, back in the days, we were on top. We ran the world with the English. Stalin won the Second World War. We were on, we were riding kind of high, and all these other kinds of things. And we want to continue that. Now, a couple of good things about Putin, first and foremost. You see, Gorbachev came in and destroyed from within the Soviet Union, okay? The CIA did not destroy the Soviet Union. It was from within. In other words, undermining the system from within, which is something that China is making sure that they do not do, right? You cannot get rid of the Communist Party and its control and its tight grip. You cannot liberalize the way Russia did because it crumbled, right? Again, no value judgments here. It's just the fact that they came in and tried to liberalize perestroika, as it was called, and perestroika, I forget the other one, but it collapsed, it crumbled, and there was all this corruption, all these other kinds of things, and yeah, sure, we wanted to say, oh, democracy, all those kinds of things, but no, it was mainly strong men and gangsters and all these other, the whole thing was going to hell. Boris Yeltsin and all that stuff. Putin came in and he started to put an end to that, right? In a way that the Russians were actually satisfied with. They liked it. They liked some stability coming in, okay? Now, but here's the problem. It's a problem that tends to happen with, let's say, Stalin or the czars and whatnot, right? So remember the context of I want to be a providential power, if you will, and I want to compete at the highest levels, okay? So the typical formula that Russians use is I'm going to create a heavy-handed state, suppress the people, squeeze them to get the juices so that I can then go out there and compete against the West. Stalin did it masterfully, if I'm sure you would agree, that kind of a thing. So that's the pattern. However, here's the conundrum. When they do this, it goes from strong state to strong man, right? And a strong man is anti-strong state. You can have both. The strong man needs to squeeze the state and keep it in check, okay? The strong man needs to have sycophants whom agree with him around. Hence, there's no challenge. And hence, the competence of this particular regime is lessened, right? Because you have all these sycophants who do not challenge you, and they're not as talented as you, okay? And there's a vicious circle there where you actually start to think, oh my God, I am the best, the greatest, whatever, right? I mean, Stalin showed this, this perfectly, but same thing with Putin. Okay, so I want to be a providential power. I want to compete against the West. I come in, I start cleaning things up in Russia. That's good stuff that was actually done after Russia was kind of destroyed from within by perestroika and whatnot, the reforms and the liberalizations and all these other kinds of things. Okay. However, I want to use the state to kind of oppress the people so that I can then, use this power in a rather efficient and unitary way to go against the West. But it goes from strong state to personalized rule, strong man, and strong men don't create strong states because they're just, if you think about it for a second, they don't work together. There's no continuity, right? You don't have strong institutions because state's about institutions, but you want to control these institutions. So you're going to then put sycophants in there. It's actually going to make your regime not as talented as it should be. And then you're now in a particular kind of a box, which Putin, I would argue, finds himself in, further contextualizing what he's going through right now. I don't know if you have any comments on what I just said.
Yeah, so, I want to comment on one of the first things that you mentioned earlier is, did he overextend? He did a lot of things, right? He stabilized Russia, removed and reduced a lot of the corruption, but the whole Ukraine thing, I do think he overextended on that one, right? Because I don't think he expected the response. And again, not just response, but the consistency in the response of the support for Ukraine. I mean, look, under normal circumstances, Ukraine would have lost this war a long time ago if they were not being given billions of dollars in ammunition, food, and other sort of aid by NATO-related countries. And America has just been printing money and giving it to them. So there is that element that sort of goes and has to be talked about. Russia did not expect that kind of response. I believe they really thought they're going to go in for a specialized military exercise for a couple months, maybe 5 months, and then that's it. But it's been a while, right? It's been over 2 years, going down to 3 years quite soon, actually, in February 2025. And nothing has been resolved. Now, Ukraine is not going to win this. At the most Ukraine will get is to maintain sovereignty of majority of their land. However, I do believe the eastern parts of Ukraine will be sort of given to Russia. The people there anyway speak Russian language anyways. And of course, there has to be a buffer zone created. As I mentioned earlier, look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, and also the fact that America has the Monroe Doctrine. Whether it's been enacted as a policy or not, America doesn't allow any other country to have a sphere of influence within its geographical location. And this is just sort of evident. You won't really see it. Now, the thing here about Putin as well as Russia um, is that they did make a mistake. After the Second World War, they started doing this fake liberalization, whereby they're giving these countries a chance to vote in their own leaders. But what that really led to is actually corruption,
I mean,
disintegration of the.
you mean after Stalin, right? After Stalin, really.
Right. Actually, yeah, that's true, correct, right? Uh, yeah, it actually things got worse, right? And of course, right now, the Soviet are trying to rebuild, right? They've actually, trying to rebuild their not just the political but also military support with each other. I mean, Russia has its own version of NATO, right? It's not very strong. It is mostly based with Trashkanistan countries, right? But it is there, right? They are trying to rebuild it.
100%, 100%. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about when your ambitions exceed your capabilities, and we're couching the NATO, Russia, Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump conversation within this context of great ambitions of a Eurasian empire, sees itself as providential, has actually ran the world, definitely has ran its area with the czars and whatnot for a long time. However, runs into particular kinds of problem. What problem number one? The West exists. What do you do about it? And the West is very, very powerful. Okay, it's nothing to sneeze at. Okay, now the West does stupid things like, hey, if I can't bomb you, I'll sanction you. Okay, and if I can neither bomb nor sanction you, I don't do anything, just like they don't do anything with so the reason why we throw bombs in the Middle East and sanction the Middle East is because we can, we being the United States. Okay, United States can throw bombs and sanction the Middle East because they can. The United States doesn't throw bombs, or I guess a better way to put it this way, the United States sanctions Russia because it can't throw bombs at Russia. Okay, that's the truth. And it does neither to China because it can't do anything to China. Okay, because the economy of China and United States are more or less one economy. You can't bully China economically, right? You can bully Russia economically, and you can bully the Middle East with bombs and economically as well. So you have these institutions, right? A sphere of influence of particular kinds of institutions, which we tend to call liberal democracy, represented by the Fed, the dollar, the English language, the EU, NATO, the three eyes, or whatever, all those things, right? The Eye of Sauron, all that crap. Good stuff, right? This is a challenge to the Eurasian Empire. And you find yourself in this particular problem whereby you want to create a strong state, but you end up creating strong man rule, which is anti-strong state because there's no strong institutions and continuity. You fill your ranks with sycophants whom are going to be yes men and not as talented as you. The talented ones might kind of challenge you a little bit, and they're going to stand in the way of your ambition of becoming number one by building a strong state. Hence, you're going to find yourself in this particular bind, which I am arguing that Vladimir Putin finds himself in now. So I mentioned something about hubris. First of all, amongst the mistakes that the United States made was in the 90s, we bullied them a lot. We bullied Russia a lot, right? Pushed them around in ways that were kind of undeserving. Okay, the Soviet Union fell without, without a world war. Okay, rather than taking that in as a gift and being gracious to this legitimately beautiful and interesting and worthy of reverence empire and civilization unto itself, we started slapping them around in ways which I think was not productive in the long run, and continued all through that time our nation building and nation saving doctrine of the world, partly leading to the pushback that we're seeing right now, the populist pushback, because that nation building, nation saving was great as a globalist kind of project, and globalization helped a bunch of people, wasn't really helping some people in America. Okay, hence Donald Trump comes through and says, hey, stop with all this nation building, nation saving, right? Nation saving happens on the left, right? Humanitarian bombs on the left, and then you have nation building freedom bombs on the right. But either way, same military industrial complex, same dollars, same kinds of institution being forced down. And on the same country, the same West telling Russia, hey, you know what? You can't do that. You can't control, you can have your own particular sphere of influence within your particular neighborhood and all these other kinds of things, and do it in a rather disrespectful way. I think that's the word. America was rather disrespectful in the 90s, right? And then Putin comes through. He's in the bind that I described. He starts doing this thing, and the West lets him get away with murder, right? Over and over and over again. And when you get away with murder, at some point, you start thinking that, okay, well, maybe I'll make the next move. Maybe if I do this incursion into Ukraine, I will not get the kind of pushback that I definitely got. Now, as you mentioned, Ukraine is probably not going to win this, right? Because the kinds of it's a stalemate. I don't think America is going to go all in for Ukraine, right? America is not going to start throwing bombs at Russia. We can do the sanctions thing, but we already kind of discussed that America cannot do the bomb thing with Russia. So but the West did show its teeth and a certain kind of unity when it came through, with Germany and all this other stuff, and showed this united front. But it kind of it let Vladimir think he could do this up to this point. So that was that kind of like the hubris point that I was making there. I don't know how we're doing on time, because we're going to keep this to an hour, right? Overall, the context makes the man. And rather than just talk about Vladimir Putin, okay, KGB agent, oh, here's his personal history, blah, blah, blah. It is the case that this context is rather important, especially when it comes to roles like this, where you're kind of leading something, a state, with a particular momentum, a particular history, a particular disposition all through time. But he seems to be making the same mistakes that even the czars made back then, because the czars did the same thing. That's why they got killed, right? In other words, this idea of I'm going to choke the people, as opposed to, let's say, the English, the way the English did their reforms. Liberalization, little by little, common law. Okay, cool. You guys get to do this. You guys have these rights. You guys get that right. You got kind of easing it off. And but the czars didn't do that. The particular czar that I forget his name. I think it was Alexander too, right? He was also called Alexander, not the one that defeated Napoleon. But Putin is making that same mistake of trying to create a strong state, but then ending up creating personalized rule. Strong man does not equal strong state, and then you're stuck. But anyways, Kaiser, what are some more thoughts that we can put on the table and try to wrap this whole thing regarding Vladimir and whatnot?
Yeah, I definitely do. And just to bring back the Russo version of NATO, right? They actually copied the name too. It's called Collective Security Treaty Organization. They literally just copied the name. And of course, it comprises right now of 6 members and then 3 former members. And what's interesting is the former members are the ones which have been getting encroached, right, by our friend Dwightman, right? Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Uzbekistan, right? These are former members. And the current members are Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Russia, and Tajikistan, right? So it's kind of interesting. Literally is a Trashkanistan countries, right? With their little collective security treaty organization. Now, I do think that Russia, obviously, specifically Putin and his administration, they did overextend themselves with the Ukraine situation. I think they could have done it more politically expedient, a more politically expedient manner. However, I will say this: they are winning when it comes to the soft power around the rest of the world, especially the global South. You come to Africa, utilizing their paramilitary group. They've liberated several African countries from French rule. That's given them a significant plus when it comes to soft power, right? I'm talking about countries like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. These countries had coups recently in the last couple of years. And with countries such as Niger, they've literally got rid of the French companies, the French influence in that country completely, and Russia is helping, so-called helping them rebuild. So I believe that Russia is somewhat losing, right, in the Ukraine situation. I don't mean they're going to lose a war. I mean they're losing other things there, but they
Mhm.
are also gaining when it comes to Africa, specifically these you know resource-rich areas. They're encroaching on French resources, as I stated, in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, utilizing the paramilitary group um, that Prigozhin was heading, right? And I think they're learning to move in a certain direction. They know the world, and right now, even Trump, right? Trump has stated that actually he's coming for China and Russia, for Africa, right? The interesting thing is, you mentioned earlier about multipolarity, right? Having multiple axes that other countries can kind of look at and deflect themselves off. If you get too close to one side, you're within the edge. Okay, let me come to the other side, right? So right now, America, Trump has made it clear that it is America first, and investing in African continent is an American first thing, because they want to basically outcompete China and Russia for not just the soft power, but the fact that they have all these minerals, which are going to be utilized for the next gen so-called green technology, which Europe is pushing forward. Now, Russia doesn't need to worry about green technology because they're already under so many sanctions. Russia has the advantage of actually becoming a productivity hub, right? Basically, a manufacturing hub for the next generation, whereby they will be able to sell cheap goods across the world. So there is some elements um, of power that Russia has gained throughout this whole situation.
So that's pretty good because I get to try to slap down what you said. The Soviet Union at its height was a third of the American economy. Russia is now a 15th of the American economy. It is a raw material or a commodity exporter at best, and it produces lots of talented people. Give it that, right? Lots of talented people. Shout out to Gary Kasparov and all the various poets and whatnot, and Russian scientists and all that kind of good stuff. Sure, it does that, okay? But remember, Soviet Union at its height, a third of the American economy. Now it's a 15th. You have some trash can stand countries in your sphere of influence that all of which are trying to run away to join the West. Okay, okay. You have some trash can stand countries, and you have the Sahel, literally dusty. One of these places that you mentioned. Once you come out of the plane, you got to put on your hat and your sunglasses because the dust hits you in the
Oh
face
yeah, oh yeah,
so hard.
it'll make you sick. Yeah.
Okay, it could make you sick. You have trash countries and dusty countries in the Sahel and in West Africa or some shit. Okay, and the trash countries that you actually have are trying to. All of them are trying to run to the West. Okay. Meanwhile, the West has everything. It has the high technology. By the way, as I mentioned, you go to your regional conferences. People are speaking English. Okay, can you forego the West? No, because you need that sweet, sweet high-end technology. You're talking about the chips. You're talking about all these other kinds of things, military, blah blah blah. You need the West. You need the dollar. You need the SWIFT system. Okay, you're not running EU, NATO, all those other institutions, and all these other kinds of things, right? The the again, 1/15th, okay, of the size. You have nuclear weapons, that's great. Some trash canisters countries and some Sahel stuff, that's great. You have great ambitions though, but these capacities they're not gonna get you there, right? As I gave the and I should reiterate that the fact that yes, to see yourself as a providential power, to look back in your history and to say, yeah, we've been running things out here in the land empire, right? While the British were the sea people, we were the land people, and we and the British ran things and defeated Napoleon, and we've been doing stuff, and Stalin won World War II and all this other great, great, great. But right now you're 1/15th of the United States and all these other kinds of things that I mentioned, and you're gonna need to change tack here. This particular context, this particular approach towards this hubristic approach is not going to get you what you want, I think, and it's been empirically proven out. No?
Yeah, so I'll generally agree with you, but I also want to add that the change in tactic is what BRICS is about. One of the reasons why America has right now yeah, why Russia only has 1/15 of the economy America has is actually because America became the world reserve currency, and that was able to allow them to propel and basically print money and give it to Silicon Valleys and reinvest and loan. What I'm trying to say here is that Russia is going to be able to do the same if BRICS succeeds, because they will be one of the chairpersons in the BRICS Bank. And if you look at it collectively, the economy of these dusty BRICS nations and allies, it's bigger than that of the American and its allies' economies ultimately. So it just
Hmm.
depends on if they can survive long enough to realize this BRICS thing, right? One of the challenges that they have right now is actually creating a SWIFT system. I don't mean the tech behind it. That's not easy. Sorry, that's not difficult. It's obviously creating the trust, um, the reliability in this new network, right? Will people trust it? Will they change banks? Will they have BRICS banks all over their countries and long-term hold money in these resources? But I do believe that if you look at Bitcoin as an example, Bitcoin has now gone up to about $91,000, right? $90,926 or so as we speak right now. So I'm seeing that Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, this is the future of this new BRICS bank nation, right? It's going to have to be on digital currencies, and it's going to be have to be something that's decentralized, because why would people trust another form, right? Another centralized system. Basically, for BRICS to work, they have to one up on the Western system. They can't just provide an alternative, claiming lower interest rates, because there's too much at risk when it comes to holding out their money and currency across time and utilizing it as a main means of exchange. So yes, I believe Russia has an opportunity here if they can make BRICS work.
Yes, 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 yes. And this might be a good place for us to start wrapping things up. And that with that big if, right? Um, there's certain issues regarding that voluntary aspect that I was talking about, right? Now, in other words, rightly or wrongly, coerced or brainwashed, people are running to join the West, right? They're running to join the West. They're not running in that other direction per se. And that direction, I can even give a simple example of one of the ways in which, quote unquote, the United States defeated Russia, even though, as I mentioned, it was more of an internal uncoupling, right? That's why no bombs were dropped and nothing like that. There was no Armageddon, right? Soviet Union collapsed without Armageddon. A great thing actually that happened in the 20th century. But one of the ways in which the West won was by just showing the fact that they had more toys, more pantyhose, more T-shirts, more socks, right? Fridges filled with oranges and grapes, right? Literally having more, okay? And however you claim they did it, or is it capitalism? Is it not? Is it whatever it is, right? That image is a central image, the image of Coca-Cola and McDonald's that America puts out there. I'm talking about in the realm of soft power now, but there's also actual tangible stuff behind the soft power that attracts people. And it doesn't seem to be the case, especially with Russia. China is a different beast. China's a different beast. And when it comes to BRICS, China, yes, 100%. Okay. And if BRICS succeeds because of China, yes, Russia will benefit from that. However, they have a soft power issue in addition to the fact that they have this hard power issue. Um, yes, we do not mess with China. We do not sanction or bomb them because we cannot. We sanction Russia because we cannot bomb Russia. Then we bomb and sanction everywhere else, which is an issue in and of itself regarding the way America conducts its own foreign policy. And I'm going to repeat Foreign Policy 101 regarding Russia and the West, if you will, and then I'll let you have the last word. But basically, it's a question of sphere of influence. Are you allowed to have your own natural sphere of influence whereby you are controlling your own particular neighborhood, right? And Russia sees itself again as that providential Eurasian empire. We've been running things here. We ran it well, maybe not so well or whatever, but it's our natural backyard. You guys go, you have your backyard, and you go meddling in the other places as well. You don't even let us have our backyard. And then what does the West say? The West say, hey, sure, you can have your own. So the two things are going on. Number one, the West doesn't want you to have your natural backyard, obviously, because power, it's about absolute power. In a world of anarchy, you want to be the most powerful as you can be. And international relations is about anarchy because there is no international God system to go appeal to. Okay, if the guy with the biggest stick comes in and starts whacking you in the head, that's it. He whacked you in the head. He took over your country. That's it. The space aliens are not going to come save you. So yes, the United States doesn't want you to have sphere of influence. Okay, that's the quiet part. But the part that they say out loud is, sure, you can have your sphere of influence, but these countries have to be able to. They have the right to choose. Coming with the liberal democratic weapon, if you will, that weapon of liberalism, that weapon of freedom of choice. Hey, let me ask the Ukrainians and the other trash canistans, do they want to join you? If they don't join you, hey, I can't let you do that, right? I can't let you, force these people into these binds. No, I gotta do something. I'm the West. I'm Superman. I'm for freedom, justice, and united, whatever. That kind of stuff. But that's basically foreign policy 101 regarding the West and the United States. Can you have your sphere of influence? Yeah, sure. You can have your sphere of influence, but I want these people to be able to choose. And if they cannot choose, by the way, Russia signed that treaty that says that nations are free to choose their own alliances. But it's a treaty that definitely serves the West because of the West's way of influence, and the West's way of pulling people in can be seen as voluntary, if you will. But go ahead, I'll let you have the last word on this, and we'll be out.
Yeah. So regarding the sphere of influence and the illusion of choice, what's interesting here is, as you mentioned, right? America obviously has a lot of soft power, and it's instilled within, it's carrot and stick, right? It's like, okay, if you do what we say, we can prop you up like these countries like Japan, Singapore, South Korea, and we can allow your economies to thrive. And also, we would buy into your economic activities. Now, the interesting thing here is actually Russia has only survived thus far because they didn't buy into the American sphere of influence. And I think that's the thing with why Russians are so scary to the West. They have this spirit of endurance, right? That is actually a scary spirit to have. The Russians said, no, we're not going to buy into this idea that we're going to be producing these highly specialized economic. We're not going to buy into the specialized economic system. For example, what China does, right? Producing electronics, technologies. No, Russia said, we're going to be producing things that you must have, whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you like me or you don't like me. Oil, right? Gas. Everybody needs these things, right? When it comes to the oil and gas, no matter what you keep talking about green technology, these things are in the, analogically similar to the dollar. It's liquid.
These are commodities that you either have or you don't.
Exactly. These are the most liquid things if you compare them to cash, right? You can literally go set up a generator right now and burn oil, and then you will have energy. You cannot rely on solar or wind all the time. It just doesn't work all the time. So there is an element of whether you like it or not, you're going to buy whatever it is, especially if you're Europe. Europe will literally die without gas during winter. I mean, I've seen cold winters, right? I've actually killed, old people. So there's that element of them actually strategically refusing to join this specialized economic activities and actually stick to what works, right? Food security, right? If you look at Russia and Ukraine are the world's leading producers of wheat. And everybody eats wheat. Every country eats bread, right? That's a fact. So they work on agriculture, fertilizers, oil, gas, gold, all these commodities that everybody wants and everybody needs. And whether you buy directly from them or through India, it doesn't really matter. They are definitely going to be making money from it. So you can take $600 billion of their money, of the oligarchs, in order to make and create some kind of revolution. It's not going to work because there is that iron control, as you mentioned, right? An authoritarian iron control from Putin. So it's one of those things. Is it going to last? We don't know. Putin right now has an arrest warrant from, the International Criminal Court. Again, that's really it's not saying much, right? So does Netanyahu of Israel, right? But these countries are not going to send off their leaders like that, right? There is a difference in how they play. But I will say this: The reason, because someone's going to ask, right? Well, how come black African countries always send their leaders into the International Criminal Court? The difference is black African countries are not actually involved in interstate tensions. They're oppressing their own people. Right now, Russia is not oppressing its own people. It's technically oppressing the neighboring country. So his people are not just going to send him off to ICC.
Very well put, very well put. I think all sides have been adequately covered. We talk about power and we talk about capabilities. We talk about spheres of influence being the main geopolitical, quarrel, if you will, between the West and Eurasian Empire. We talk about the context that creates the man. We're not going to sit here and give you, oh, well, Vladimir Putin spent 5 years in the KGB and then he did this. Like, no, we want to talk about the context that creates this person, and there's certain patterns that we see and certain traps that any quote-unquote despot will fall into when he is trying to do the despot game by creating a strong state, inevitably creating a strong man system, which means you have a weak state and you have sycophants around you, hence you're not very as efficient or as good as you think you are. Meanwhile, you have this outsized ambition when you are 1/15th the economy of the West. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to everyone in the chat indeed. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace, we're out. And yeah, shout out to Kaizorian Empire. Thank you for coming through. Thank you for coming through, brother. Yeah, brother, or some other stupid shit like that you people say. Alrighty then.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.